I'm glad to be meeting with all of you today. Joe had mentioned to me and did just now as well that there are some individuals within your company that are familiar with and have been using Newforma. I think some of you, though, that are joining this call maybe have not or are trying to get familiar with some of the features that are available in it. Before I dive into just a sort of high-level overview of all that Newforma does offer, particularly the core functions and the contract management, are there any particular questions that you have or observations that you'd like me to make sure that I do answer for you in the course of this overview? Okay.
This is Bill from Pittsburgh. Just briefly, we're looking at this from the terms of document control, but I've noticed there's a lot of other opportunities and options here that are valuable to us. But that's the direction we're going from Pittsburgh, and we're the group that has not used it very much. So.
Okay. And just a point of clarification, because we tend to use a lot of terminology in this industry that have a lot of multiple meanings. When you say document control, in your mind, what does that particularly mean?
So we're going to be receiving documents from other sources, the OEMs, and from site managers, along with having our documents involved. And we are responsible for controlling all of the document control through the project.
Okay. All right, thanks. That helps me because, like I said, we tend to overlap a lot of terminology. Newforma does a little bit too, primarily because of the fact that we are supporting all kinds of different disciplines. And so we try to leave some of that terminology somewhat generic. So if there's any point when I'm talking about something that might seem document control related, please don't hesitate to raise any questions you have around that. Because generally speaking, yeah, absolutely. Generally speaking, what Newforma is designed to do is wrap around all of the documents that you have. So as a program, essentially what we do when we create a project in Newforma is we point it at your document source. So wherever your file server is, or if you guys are using an electronic document management system like ProjectWise or SharePoint, are you using any of those as engineers?
We do use some SharePoint with this particular customer. Typically, we're internal though.
Okay. And the reason I asked that question. Oh, sorry.
We don't use ProjectWise. Yeah.
You do not use ProjectWise?
No.
Okay, just SharePoint. Okay. The reason I asked that question is because Newforma does have the ability to connect to those electronic document management systems as well, which I do find a lot of engineers do use, at least to some degree. So from your perspective in using Newforma, it will give you full access to the files that are contained within those containers as well. So it really gives you that one source view of all of your project data, whether it sits on a file server or whether it sits inside of one of those EDMS systems. And it's designed then, when it's wrapped around that, then to be able to index all of the data that's in there. So we open all of those documents, we make sure that we have read everything that's inside of them, index that so that you have the ability to do searches on that data. We can point you to that data within Newforma so that you can create relationships to it. And I'll talk about those things a little more in depth as we get into it. But then Newforma is also designed to really help you keep track of all that project information and communication in the logging that goes along with all of that. So when you open Newforma up, it's designed again to really narrow your focus down to the things that really matter to you, rather than the overwhelming amount of data that you do have as a company. So the home screen inside of Newforma allows you to control what projects is it that you're really focused on and that you're seeing when you're working inside of Newforma. Kind of unlike our file management, when we go in there, we see everything and we have to drill down into it. You do have access to see all of your projects on that All Projects tab. So this will list every project that you have added into Newforma, that you pointed to some of that project data. But that My Projects tab just allows you to narrow that down. And when you're over there, it's very simple to add any projects you want. You can just view through these. When you're in Newforma, we provide you a lot of ways to really sift and filter through data quickly as well. So everywhere inside of Newforma, you're going to see these column headers that allow you to sort things like you would in a spreadsheet, but they also have filters underneath all of them. So anytime you're looking for something, you want to narrow that list down very quickly, you can use those filters to quickly find what you're looking for. So I can just start typing something and it will narrow that list down very quickly for me as well. And when you want to add those projects, you can just go ahead and in that particular project, I already had on mine, so it's not showing me the option, but if I don't have the project already listed on my Projects tab, it's going to give me the ability to go ahead and over on this side to add that project to my projects. So that gives you a nicely shortened list of your projects that you're working in. And when you open those up, that's when you're presented with all the activity centers that Newforma has available for you. So this is really your home screen for your project. All of those little icons that you see in here, you can kind of think of them as little mini programs or logs within Newforma. It is possible to turn those on and turn them off for a project too. So if you don't feel like you're going to be using all those functions, rather than overwhelming your users with all the capabilities that Newforma has, those can be minimized to just the things that you know that you'll be working on within the project. Or you can even turn them on throughout the course of the project as you go through phases, and there are things that you need at certain times and not at others. Some of the core functionalities I've already started to address a little bit. Right in the upper left-hand corner and in that upper section, we have those favorite activities. These tend to be the things that people are working in the most often or on a daily basis. And so since Newforma is looking at your data at its heart, right in the upper left corner is the Project Files Activity Center. And this is essentially kind of a supplement or a replacement for Windows Explorer. So everything I can do in Windows Explorer, I can do here. So I can browse through my files that are associated with the project. Difference being, again, Newforma is designed to narrow your focus down. So I don't have to drill down through all of that project data to find the data that I'm looking for. Since Newforma is pointed at the root of that project data, when I work through Newforma in that Windows Explorer-like environment, it just takes me straight to my data. So I don't have to drill down through my network drive and find it. And you'll notice I've actually got a couple of root folders here. So if you've got data in multiple locations, Newforma also lets you point a project at all the locations where that data is stored, if it's in multiple places. So in my example, I'm actually pointing at a file server here, but I do have a SharePoint location that I'm pointed at too. So all that data is together in one spot. And I can browse through those. I can open up files from here. I can right click on them and I can do my Windows Explorer tasks like I typically would. So if I want to rename them, I want to move them, I want to delete them, I can do all of that stuff right through this window as well. And one of the very key things to be aware of is Newforma is not sucking that data into Newforma. In other words, we're not taking all that data in those folders and bringing it into Newforma. This is just a pointer. So when you do things here, it's just like you're working through Windows Explorer. I'm physically working on those files on that file system, making changes, opening them up just like I would if I was in Windows Explorer. Any questions so far? Okay. So one of the key advantages of having that access through Newforma is this column you see here, related items. It starts making it possible for you to create relationships to all that data. So I think is probably all of you are intimately familiar with and have been doing all of your career. When we're working in Windows Explorer with all that data, the key ways that we have some knowledge around what that data is, where it's at, is that we're very conscious about where we file it, what those folder structures look like, what the naming conventions are, how we name the files. But Newforma helps to add another layer to that so that rather than me having to worry about whether things are mislabeled, misfiled, in wrong locations, we can start creating relationships with all that data since it's a database. And that way now I really understand things that have been done in association with those files. So if I did do some markups on that document, or if I did have that associated to some sort of document control process, I can see that quickly and easily, and I can see anything that's related to it. And you'll also see through Newforma a number of areas where we'll actually show you a change log too. So if something's happened with that information within the log, we'll record all of that for you too. So you have a very good record of everything that's gone on your projects. So if I go back here to my home page again, another key function of Newforma is giving the ability to file your project email to the project as well. And project email is another one of those areas where we accumulate a tremendous amount of data and information, but it tends to get siloed out because everybody's got their own inbox. So everybody's dealing with the mail that's coming into them. And if we wanted to know something about it, we've got to know where to go. We've got to know who to ask about it. We generally don't have direct access to that information. But Newforma makes it possible for all your users to file that information to the project data, so it becomes accessible to the entire project team. So what I'm looking at here is all the email that's been filed to this project, which already gives it relevance. And then again, I've got all those filters that will allow me to quickly sort through this. And Newforma even allows me to turn any of these activity centers into my own personal log versus the entire project log. So if I am concerned about filing all that email to the project but then losing track of it, I can just quickly toggle this back to just my stuff. And this is essentially my inbox for this project. Or I can look at everything that's been logged to the file. And by having all that email accessible out here now, I can double click on those. I can open them up. They're going to open in my native email client, Outlook in my case. And from there, then I have the ability to go ahead and interact with that email. And the advantage of that, again, is the fact that it's not siloed. I don't lose track of that information, especially as a PM. Now you've got all that information visible to you, and you can act on it. So if somebody leaves the company, somebody's on vacation, and we need to get in there and get involved in that email, I can do that. And it's not going to allow me to take the place of that person, because when I respond to those emails, it's going to come from me. So I'll add myself into that communication thread, but it does give me now access to all that email that's taken place. And we make that very easy for your users to file. So within your Outlook client, we add a Newforma ribbon in there that is going to allow you to file that email in multiple ways, whatever way is most convenient for you, or allows you to extend the logging of that information as well. So one of the things that happens when I add a project to my Newforma is Newforma actually adds some folders into your Outlook under this Newforma items to file folder location. And we're going to have a file or a folder under there for every project that you have listed on that home page in Newforma. And what I can do is I can simply just drag and drop emails down to those folders, and Newforma will automatically file those for you. So these aren't a replacement for your folders that you might put inside of your own inbox for tracking things. These are really a conduit. So when I put something there, I'm getting it out of my inbox, and I'm going to move it over to the project data. So usually these would be used for a quick, easy way to file emails when I'm basically done with them. We also give you a button up here on the toolbar or the ribbon that allows me to keep that information in my inbox. So I'm going to leave the email in here. I'm going to flag it as having been filed. So you'll see this little icon right here. That's an indicator to me, and you can see in the email itself, if I click on it, that it actually lets me know that this is an item that's been filed by Newforma for me, but leaves it available for me to continue to work on it. But when I use that button, it allows me to file to any projects that I want to, including browsing out to all of the project files. We'll just present you the ones that you're working in your My Projects list. And then it gives you a lot of other abilities too. So if I needed to save an attachment to that out separate from the email, we'll still file that email intact for you, but we'll also give you the ability to take that email and put it into a working folder somewhere in your project folders. You can immediately log it to something in Newforma, and you can add keywords to it. So there's a lot of additional functionality with this, but one of the key features is that button then allows me to keep that email inside of my inbox so I can continue working on it. And then the other immediate way is when you send emails, you may also want to file those to a project as well. So anything incoming, anything outgoing, I can quickly and easily get as part of the project record as well. Any questions about email filing functionality?
Nope.
Okay. One of the other core functionalities with Newforma is the ability to search all of that content then within that data, whether it's email, it is the files that are contained within that entire folder structure. So in the upper right-hand corner, there's a search utility that allows me to put in any kinds of search terms that I want, including more Boolean type searches. So if I really want to narrow down quickly what it is I'm looking for, I can do that, or I can start with a very generic search term and go find any document that contains that search term that I typed in. And you notice that my search happened extremely quickly down here. In fact, I didn't even get a chance to show you for that one. There was a quick crawl down here. If I'm looking for something that may have many thousands of hits within my data, that might take just a little bit longer. But it's not just then at that point in time going out and searching through all that data. That indexing process that I described earlier, that's happening all the time on your data. So as new stuff comes in, Newforma is already indexing that. So by the time anybody goes and does a search, we should already know where all that stuff's at. So the only reason this might take a while is it might take a little bit for Newforma just to paint all of that list for you. But that searching's done, so when I put in that search, it's just going to present me with every document that contains that search term. And so if I wanted to go take a look at those, I can click on any of these documents knowing that I've got that search term inside of them, and it's going to give me a preview down at the bottom. So I don't even necessarily have to go open that document up in its native application, or there is a Newforma viewer that we have as well that will open up a number of different types of files too. So if I wanted to look at PDFs, I wanted to look at image files or DWGs, I can see those previewed for me, or can also quickly open them up in a Newforma viewer as well. And when I'm looking for those, then it will even actually go highlight where that search term is contained within that document for me as well. That search allows me also to expand or contract what I'm looking for. So if I know that I'm specifically looking for something like project email, I can narrow that search down quickly. Or by default, when you do a search, it's going to look within the project that you're actively working in, but I may not know for sure where it's at, or I just know it's a project that I've been working on, that we've had some relevant information. So I can even expand that search out to search across all of the projects in my projects list, or in archived or offline projects, or I could even select the projects that I think that information may be contained within. So you can really expand and contract that search capability to the extent that you need. And where I mentioned that you have the ability to open up things like PDFs and DWGs inside of that viewer, if I go ahead and open up this drawing with the Newforma viewer, one of the nice things that Newforma will do is it will carry that search term into whatever file I open up inside the Newforma viewer. And unfortunately, I picked one that is not a good example. Let me grab a different one real quick. Top of my list here. And when I open that up in the viewer, it's going to bring that search term right in there. So since we knew that term concrete was contained in here, that find dialog is going to now allow me to quickly go and find exactly where in that document that search term is located. The other thing that's nice, yeah, go ahead.
Is this Newforma built-in viewer capable of viewing 3D models?
It does not currently do 3D, like 3D PDFs, so you would need to use the native application for that.
I see. Okay, thanks.
Yep, absolutely. But it is something that we are looking into. The other thing that's nice about this viewer, though, just while we're here and we're talking about it, is the Newforma viewer does give you a lot of capabilities around doing markups here. And so there are some markup tools within this. These markups that I can do here, these are not destructive markups. So any markups that you do in a document that you open up in the Newforma viewer act as an overlay to it, and they get saved within Newforma rather than on the document itself. So the advantage to that is I can do any kind of markups on here I want. I don't even have to have AutoCAD as an example, which many of your users that may need to go in and do this may not have, or they may not be real familiar with how to use AutoCAD. So I can open up a document like that in read-only, go in here and do non-destructive markups. The markup tools themselves don't look like they're real extensive at first glance, but the majority of all of these dialogues have got drop downs below them. So there's a number of different markup tools, clouds, leaders, textual markups, measurements, all kinds of things in here, stamps. So I can do any kinds of markups that I need to on this. And go ahead and put those on there. And then once they're in there, I can go ahead and save my markup session. or just close out of the viewer, and it will ask me automatically if I'd like to save that markup information. The other thing it allows me to do is I can have multiple individuals have done markups on it, and with the markup sessions tab in that drawing explorer that I just pulled up, it'll list any markups that have been done on this, and that way I can have several people do a markup on what they're knowledgeable about, or multiple disciplines do markups on the various things in it, and then I can overlay all of those, turn them all on, and create a final markup. But when you save those markup sessions, like I mentioned, it becomes an overlay to it. So we save that out separate. We allow you to name that session anything you want to. It'll identify the person that was logged into Newforma that was actively doing that work. Although if you're doing it in collaboration with others, you could always identify other members that were involved in doing that markup. So you can keep track of who might have been involved if there's any questions. And then here's an example of where you see then that is related to that original file. And in my changelog, as we start making adjustments and changes, this is where you would see that happening. So I'd be able to go back and see all that history too. What did we do? When did we do it? And what actually was done as part of that markup session. And when you save all those markups, that gets saved into one of the core features of Newforma as well. So there's two items right here. This is the viewer, so it acts as its own application. So I could open that up independently, much like I would Adobe Acrobat or Bluebeam. Can open that up and open those documents. But those markup sessions all get recorded for me here. So I can always go back to those at a point in time later on. Excuse me, apologize for that. Open those up. I can see a snapshot preview of the markup that was done, what the original file was. I'm going to see that original underlying file. So this starts to give you some indication of the power of that relational data that happens. I don't even necessarily have to know where that file is. I don't have to go hunting for it on my file server, because that markup information is contained in here. It's logged for me. I know who did it, when they did it, might have been me. Then I can go identify quickly with related items. There's the file that I'm looking for that was associated with that. And if I needed to even just go find that file and open it up, I can just go ahead and open it here with the viewer, or I could go to my Explorer task and I could select it in my file system. So it's going to just help me quickly find those things without having to hunt for them, or hopefully they weren't put in the wrong spot.
Excuse me, one more question. In the markup, screen, I noticed there's a tab called External Reference. So if your drawing has external reference attached to it, you can load them from that tab?
Yes, you can. Yeah, it will actually load your external references as well if you need to.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's dangerous.
Oh, sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, that's dangerous. If you don't load the XREF, so you might be missing something on the drawing that you cannot see. So it's important that you load these external references so you can see everything.
Yep, absolutely. One of the other things, I haven't gotten to it yet, but there's a lot of areas in Newforma that will actually go find those for you too. So if I am doing a file transfer, which we'll be taking a look at next, we'll also go look for those for you then too. So to your point, it can be dangerous for me to miss those or not have those because I could be missing some data. When we send a file out and it's got XREFs associated with it, Newforma will ask you, do you want to send those? Do you want to go find them and send them? And it will allow you to quickly attach those without me having to hunt them down too. So one of the other key features is an info exchange website. Essentially, it's a kind of a portal that your users external to your company can use, but really all of your users, internal and external, will actively use it a lot with the use of Newforma, because it becomes that conduit of information that you can use that provides a greater degree of tracking than Outlook tends to do for you, especially when you're sending files or large files out to somebody. So if I wanted to send files to somebody, I could start here, could create a file transfer. Maybe more typical for me to actually be inside of project files and looking around for a file that I wanted to send to somebody. So I may have browsed down and found that there's a file that I need to send out to somebody. We give you that info exchange capability here as well. So if I wanted to quickly send a file out, I could go ahead and do that. And in conjunction with any of that communication that you have going on, you can attach transmittals to those things as well. So if I really need that formalized transmittal document filled in, I can do that. I'm going to just go ahead and do mine just as a straight transfer. All I have to do is just identify who I'm sending it to. And if you've got a contact directory in Newforma that's filled out, you've got your project team built out in the project, you can quickly identify those users here. I can also just type an email address. So even if I don't have a contact directory fully established, I think you probably do. You've been using Newforma for about a year now. But I can quickly start just typing an address in there and it'll populate it for me too. Fill in a subject, much like I would with an email. Put any remarks that I would want to show up, because this is actually going to generate an email notification to the recipient to let them know what this is. So this would be a subject of the email. This would be any comments about what I'm sending them, or just like an email body that I'd want. And then I'm going to attach any files that I want to send to them. Well, since I started with a file, it's already populated that in there for me. But I could add any additional files here that I want to. I can add entire folders. So one of the nice things about doing these file transfers through your Info Exchange website is it allows you to do very large transfers. So I could do gigabytes of data going out through that in a transfer to somebody. And it also, as we've been talking about, if there were DWGs associated, it'll go grab those XREFs for me if I'd like. And I can narrow down what I want to send. I may not need to send everything. I might just need to send the CTV files or the font files, things like that, or I may need all of those XREFs. It's also going to save record copies for me if I'd like. So anytime I send a transfer through your Info Exchange server, several things are happening for me with that are far in advance of what email certainly does. And even if you've used things like FTP servers or even Box and Dropbox or other file sharing, things like that in the past. So a lot of things layered on this that are going to help you with the transfer and management of that information too. So when I send a file out, Newforma is going to automatically, if I'd like, create a record copy of it. What that essentially is a point-in-time snapshot of that document, so that later on, if somebody has questions about a document that they think that we sent to them, we can go back and we can identify that, yeah, this is exactly what we sent you when we sent that to you. And I'll show you how that works in a little bit, but it can be a real advantage to you, because sometimes when we're sending a file, you saw in my case, I grabbed that off my file server. It might be a file that's going to actively change over time. By having that snapshot, I know that I've got an image of what that file looked like when we sent it, so I can really identify exactly what they should have gotten at the point in time that we wanted them to get it. And then when you create those transfers, it's going to pop up a dialog that just also does some additional things for you on that server. It's going to allow you to establish notifications to them. So in addition to the initial notification they get, letting them know that they've been sent something, you can also have the server let them know that they need to download those before they expire. So you can set expiration dates on things. So again, where that's an advantage to you over some of the other file sharing tools that you may have used in the past is this actively keeps itself clean if you need it to, so that data doesn't sit out there, become aged, and become potentially a liability to you if somebody's getting access to information that's no longer relevant or valid. And it'll also do all those notifications to users, both to the recipient as well as to you as the sender. So if I want it to notify me and let me know when somebody has downloaded something, it can do that. Or if I want it to let me know that certain individuals haven't downloaded something, it can do that. And it'll also let them know you need to get this downloaded because this is about to expire. So you can have all kinds of notifications going off that frees you up to not have to worry about it, not have to be thinking about, did that get communicated to them? So there's a lot of things that this will do for you. Once you've done file transfers, all of that is logged for you through that Info Exchange Activity Center. So if I go look at any of my file transfers that are happened here, it's going to filter them for me again, so I can take a look at what's all the stuff that's come into me, what's all the stuff that's gone out, what's stuff that's pending, waiting for somebody to process. I took a look at all of my outgoing transfers as an example, though. I can see all those file transfers that have been done, and I can see any of the activity that's happened on my change log as well. So that becomes front and center in Info Exchange because we frequently care a whole lot about what's actually happened with that information that we sent out. And so if I take a look at one like this, I can see that change log is a little more extensive because it'll let me know when did that file transfer actually happen, who did it, and then I can see if anybody's actually downloaded that file transfer. So in this case, I can see that Peggy actually did download that on this date, and then she came back apparently and she downloaded just part of it at a later date. So I can double click on that and I can even see which file of that entire package did she actually download at that point in time. So again, what that really does is it gives me a much stronger record than is typical so that I know exactly when somebody did something. And so if Peggy's calling me months down the road and claiming that there's a problem and it's our fault because we didn't send her the files she needed or the files that she got were not the right ones, we have a record. We can see Penny did or didn't download those files, or sorry, Peggy did or didn't download those files when she's claiming she did or should have. And then with that transferred files tab, those are those point in time snapshots, those record copies. So this is exactly what that file looked like at the time that we transferred that to Peggy back, in this case, that's been several years ago. So I can still go look at this and I can open this up and I can say, well, Peggy, this is exactly what we sent you at that point in time, and now identify whether there is any fault there or not.
Excuse me, does Peggy must have Newforma or no?
Nope, she doesn't have to have Newforma, because what this will do is when we send those transfers out, she'll get an email notification with a download link. In fact, I should have that up here. I'll give you an example real quick. Apologize, I should have had this external user's email up. So it just sends them a notification, and with those options that we had when we sent out that transfer, it would allow me to identify, do I want to force them to log into that external website, or do I want to just go ahead and let them download from that email? So here's an example that's similar to what a transfer would be. This is actually a folder that we've shared out so that they have perpetual access to it, but it would look very much like this. So it would allow them to just go ahead and download those files right from the email that they're sent. Or we could remove that and require that they log into your website in order to get access to those files. So it really depends on how secure you need to make those downloads. Okay? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, any other questions around any of those core functionalities that I've already talked about? Okay, I want to talk briefly then about some of the document control management that you were concerned about or interested in as well. So again, I asked you about document control in your perspective because we do actually have an activity center in Newforma called document control. But what it's really designed to do is be a location where you can log all of your sheet sets, essentially, or your sorry, drawing a sudden blank on any of your specification documents. You can put those in there as well. You can really store anything within document control and then keep track of revisioning on that. It's also a place then where you can keep track of, so I already said this basically, but keep track of those record documents, keep track of revisions, and then keep track of any issuances of those documents that you've done as well. So as I mentioned, this is typically used primarily around communicating out the full sheet set, the drawing documents or the specification documents. What you were describing sounds a little bit more like your process around receiving documentation, and I'm sure that you'll get to publishing things through here and tracking those revisions as well. But we also have an entire section of activity centers around what we call contract management. It's a little bit of an overlapping naming convention again for us. We call it contract management just for simplicity's sake, but it really extends through the entire life of the project. So it's not only contract management, but construction administration as well. So the functionality within all these, like I said, it spans the entire process. So as we're doing submittals, as we're doing RFIs through the project, we could be doing those early, even in bid phase, all the way through early contract, negotiations into the actual construction itself. And then, of course, all of the change management that would occur as well. So change orders, proposal requests, supplemental instructions, all that's logged here as well. What you've seen so far in all these activity centers, there's some slight variance in the way things work, but they're all fairly intuitive. People get down to this section sometimes and like, oh my goodness, there's a whole bunch of activity centers just under contract management that I have to learn. But the way these all work is identical. So once you learn how to log one item, you know how to do all of them. So we make it very simple and relatively intuitive again. And these have what we really refer to as a workflow process in them. It really helps me to keep track of whose court is that ball in, who's responsible for it at this point in time, and what communication back and forth in and out of your organization has happened around these things. So kind of more to the document control process that you described, I think it was Glenn. If I go into submittals as an example, if I receive something that's a submission to my organization, this is the log that would probably get recorded inside of. And as a log, it's going to show me everything that we've logged in, everything that we've logged as a submission. And then you'll notice there's plus signs down the left-hand side of all these. And if I expand those out, it will give me a view of all the steps or the actions that have taken and that ball in court. So I can quickly see what have we done around that submission? What did we receive? When did we receive it? Who did we get it from? Then we can see if we forwarded that off to anybody for a review process on it, when we did that, what files we actually sent to them, any responses we got back on those reviews. We might turn around and forward it again. So when I was referring to a workflow process, we have a very fluid workflow. It's not a very scripted. In other words, I'm not funneled into a process that may or may not work at times. So as an example, I may get something, send it for review, don't get the response that I need, or don't get a full response, and I may need to send it back to them, get another comment back, and I may need to do it to somebody else, or I may need even to do these things in series. So you may be sending it to multiple disciplines and you need them done in order. So it really doesn't lock you into a particular workflow. It's very fluid in terms of recording those things, but it really helps me to see what the process flow was to get from point A to point B, or from A to Z. And the way we do that is through forms. So all of this stuff is just simply logged in by creating a form. In the case of submittals, because we may know from our contract documents what submissions should already be done, we could actually pre-populate that log, so we're just checking things off as they come in. Or I could just say, hey, you know what, this is something new coming in, I just need to get it logged in. And so we provide you with a form to fill in all the things that are typically common around submissions. So there's a whole bunch of fields in here you can fill in. Again, I don't want you to be overwhelmed by those. We just try to provide all of the things that are typical that we'd want to record around these things. But the only things that are really required when we fill that log in is that we know who it's from, what the subject was. We may establish some due dates for these things. And again, Newforma is doing a lot of the tracking for you so that you don't have to do it. So I can set due dates and I can have the system send out reminders and notifications to everybody on its own, on those schedules you set. So especially as a PM or a project administrator, I don't have to be eyes on the log every second. I know that those communications are going out, and I don't have to be the bad guy contacting people too and letting them know, hey, you're running late on stuff. And we can attach any documents, descriptions of contents, and we can associate emails that we've gotten around those things, any additional supporting documents. So this gives you, again, all of that cross-reference material. So anything related to that I have, I can put in one spot. So for those of you that haven't been using Newforma, I know you're doing this stuff today. You've already got a process around it. Typically what that looks like, and feel free to tell me, well, our process is very different from that, or we've got another process that works well for us already, or this is what we've been doing. But typically that looks like emails. So emails are coming and going from one or more individuals. So we've got that information sitting in somebody's email inbox. There's probably files associated with it. So somebody's responsible for getting those files filed in the right location on the file server. And then you may or may not have a spreadsheet that you're keeping track of things a little bit more granularly as well. I find some companies don't even go to the spreadsheet level, that's just primarily with email. So a lot of times that can make it a bit challenging to try to stay on top of things and keep track of what's going on. So by having a log like this that pulls everything together in one place, I don't have to hunt around for stuff. Saves me a lot of time finding it. Questions come up, I go one place and I can get all the answers very quickly. And we also make it extremely easy for you to log this stuff in. So it doesn't matter how you get it. I could get it physically. Somebody could walk something in the door and I could quickly do the log like you just saw me do. Or I could get it by email, which is probably fairly typical. Or we actually, with that Info Exchange website, we give you a form out there on that website that you could allow users to log into, and they could fill that information in, and it would automatically come into my log and notify me as well. So again, it saves me a tremendous amount of time, especially the more I utilize the functions of Newforma, the more I train the team. But if I do have something that came in via email that I want to go ahead and get logged in, I'll just grab this. It says it's an RFI. I'm going to treat it like a submittal. With that email filing capability that I showed you earlier, I can quickly do a file of that email, and I could just file the email, and that would be it. But in this case, this is not just an email. This is a submittal. So I want to file that email into the project data, but I'd also like to go ahead and log it as something. So that file as gives me the ability to quickly pick the project that it belongs to. And then I can identify what in my logs would I like to record that as. And so in my case, I'm going to treat that as a submittal. And now it's going to create the submittal just like you saw me do manually. And again, it's going to ask me, well, do you already have a log that you'd like to check this off against because you were expecting it to come in? Or is this just something new that you need to log? Well, in my case, it's just something new. I'm going to go ahead and log it in. And by virtue of having those extensions to other applications like Outlook, it's going to fill all that information in for me. So again, where that might have taken me several minutes before because I had to go file that file onto the file server, and I had to go maybe log that into my spreadsheet, go find that and open it up, that in a few seconds did all of that for me. So it plugged in all the relevant information for me. My project settings can already establish due dates based on our contractual turnaround times. I can turn on reminders. It's going to automatically number things in my log for me. It's pulled all the body of the email in there, the subject in there. I can still modify any of this if I need to. So if they misspelled something or they wrote a novel in the subject line, I could always clean that up a little bit. So I already filled in this description of contents based on the file I received. It's going to file that file that I got on my file server in a record copy location that you identify with the project settings for me. So that's already done. That email that I got is already attached to it. So again, everything's together in one place in a couple of clicks and I'm all done. And then I can step right into that review process. So if I know right now I need to send this off to somebody so that they can start reviewing it, I can do that. If I'm the guy who's reviewing it, I can also do that. So I could just go ahead and respond back to them and close it out. And we do have new connectors that we're starting to create. I know a lot of companies use Bluebeam. Is that something you guys are using very much of?
Yeah, we use Bluebeam too.
Okay, so we do have, if you have Bluebeam Studio licenses, Studio Prime, I should say. If you have Bluebeam Studio Prime licenses, we do have a connector for Bluebeam as well. So if I wanted to just step into a Bluebeam Studio review session with that, you could do that. Newforma will automatically open up Bluebeam. It'll open up that or create that Studio Prime session for you. It'll create notifications to everybody who should be involved in that review for you. And it will track that. And then when that review is done and completed, it'll suck those marked up documents back in for you so you can close this thing out as well and include those. So that's all part of that workflow process and helps you to track everything that's gone on with that. And so again, all of that then is going to be logged here for me and be very easy for me to see everything that we've done with it, where it's at, anything that's late. And we have a lot of reporting inside of Newforma as well. So every one of these activity centers has reporting. I can run just a standard log report, which is basically however I make my log view look here. And there's a lot of configuration I can do around that too. So you can right click on column heads. I can turn on or turn off just about any of the information that's contained within those logs. And so if I want to see that in this view so that I can filter by it, I can sort by it, I can do that. You can move things around. So I might want the subject over here next to my ID. And I can run reports out of here that will give me a log report that looks pretty much exactly like this. And I can pump that out into any number of different formats. Since this is Excel-like in its view, if I run it in Excel, I'll get an Excel report that really looks a lot like that report. So that you can have that handy if you need to take that to any meetings. We also have a lot of additional specialized reports that we've created. So over time, we found that customers have very specific needs that make sense for most of our customers. So we have some that will automatically break this out and group it by responsible company, by statuses, things like that. So there's a lot of different kinds of specialized reports like that as well. Any questions about anything you've seen so far? There are also other activity centers there. If they're of particular interest, let me know. We've got about 10 minutes left in the time that I know you had scheduled. I'll also go out and take a look at that website for you too, so you have a quick view of that.
Yeah, we have 5 different packages. We have the BIM package, we have the NCM, we have the NPC communication, we have the NPC file sharing, and the productivity packages. So
yep.
Mainly the basic one is the NPC communications package, right? This one includes the info exchange, this one includes the email, correct?
Yes, it does. Yep.
Okay. Now, we were wondering if you just give us a little overview of what each package functions are, so we can make a decision on how many licenses required per our users' roles on the project. I mean, for example, if we're planning for a project, we would like to know how many do I need from each license for the roles that are defined on the project. So that will help us a little bit to make a decision of how many extra licenses we require.
Yeah, absolutely. Let Joe answer that question. He's the license guy, so he can tell you more what's in those packages.
So, so Conan, they are on our component licensing system, but you can really just see it as they also have the NBIM module and the CM module, and then the core activity centers. So I know we really went over for the most part the core, which is the communications, productivity, and file sharing packages. If you don't mind just doing a really high level, the submittals and RFIs for the contract management. I know the building information management is a little more complex, but you can also see it, J&E, talking to you, sorry, as a Revit plugin, and it allows you to push information from Revit to Newforma and vice versa. So yeah, if you don't mind, Conan, just kind of doing a real high level of submittals and RFIs, I think that would be that's the main activity center we did not cover.
Well, actually, we just went over submittals, and so RFIs really behaves identical to that. So everything you saw with the submittal, essentially that logging process that I showed you, that occurs with RFIs as well. The one piece that I was going to address, and if there's any questions about that, I know that was pretty high level, and I really didn't go through the entire workflow, but alluded to those logs that you have that will allow you to record those processes. But with that submittal RFI process, one of the things that can be extremely useful to you is the ability to use info exchange as a means to communicate that as well. So what I mean by that is there is this web portal that you're using for those file transfers. So we talked about doing info exchange file transfers, and the recipient side of that could just be that email that I showed you that they could download from, but they could also log into this portal, and it's going to look to them very similar, and your internal users can log in here as well. So if you're out of the office and you want to get access to a lot of the log information, or you want to process things like file transfers with somebody, you can do that out here as well. But if I was looking at those file transfers that were sent to me, they're going to show up here as well. I can go take a look at any of that and download those files right from here too. or I can open them up and view them. There is also a markup or a viewer out here, so that capability of doing the viewing of documents, PDFs, CAD files, things like that, and marking them up, that's all available out here through the website as well. So you can do sort of individual collaborative type markups with this. It's not as same time, real-time collaborative as Bluebeam, but it would allow multiple people to be doing markups on those same documents, saving those markup sessions, and be able to do overlays of those. The other thing that this gives me the ability to do is that communication around things like submittals, RFIs, change order proposals. So if somebody was sending you an RFI or a submittal, they can log in here, fill in the basic information. So you notice it doesn't have near the number of fields as your internal does. And we do that for simplicity's sake. We don't want to overwhelm your external users when they come out here, because they're thinking, look, I'm just going to put a subject in, send it to somebody, attach a file. So that's mostly what this is doing, or in the case of an RFI, giving them a place to ask a question, maybe give a comment with it and attach files. But when somebody fills this all in and they send those off, those again will come automatically into your log for you. You'll get notified. So I'll get an email notification letting me know somebody sent something to me, and that incoming email notification will let me know that that's already been put into my log into this pending incoming location. So now you're really saving yourself a lot of time. I really don't have to do anything more than just get a quick review of it. So when I take a look at something that's been sent to me through Info Exchange, it shows up here in pending, all I have to do is just go ahead and receive it into my log, which just really says I'm just acknowledging it, because it's really already here. All the information's already plugged in. I'm acknowledging that I got it. And it also gives me then the opportunity, if there are other areas in that log that I'd like to fill in, reason that we got it, what the discipline is associated, if there's a contract that we want to tie it to, I can do all those things before we officially put it into our log. But then again, you can jump right into that review process or close that out with a response. So did that give you a good overview of the contract management itself?
Yeah, I mean, you can have RFIs, DCNs, potential change orders, and all that stuff. Contract even. That's the contract management. A little bit on the commercial side. Now, so it's a must-have, the communication package for everybody involved in the Newforma project. Correct? That's a must-have.
Yeah, I would say communication and the file sharing and productivity.
File sharing, these are must. Okay.
Yep, and that's the ones that you do have. Basically, right now you have 35 licenses for.
And what's the productivity?
So productivity is it's specifically meeting minutes, action items, and two others. I'd have to get back to you on it because I'm not completely. Actually, if you give me 1 second, but it's basically action items and meeting minutes are the most important ones, I would say. It also includes, let me see. Sorry about that. It also includes the document control.
Action items.
Yep.
Action items.
Document control that Conan went over as well, and document sets, field notes, and project images as well.
Can you do project timeline and stuff like that?
A quick review of the project timeline.
Yeah, no, I mean, can you do that in the productivity?
Correct. Yes.
Is included? Okay.
And I'll
okay.
Send
So
you a list.
basically, yeah. Basically, I mean, the communications, the file sharing, the productivity, and the CM and CM are required. Now, the BIM package, if you want to use Revit to add it to it or tie it indirectly, you can add that later at a later date. You can do that at any time, correct?
Yes, under your current agreement, you can.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I don't know, Bill, Glenn, the IT guys, anybody have any questions in regard?
Yeah. I want to go back to document control because that's really what's paramount for a lot of this. You know, so just for an instance, and forgive me, I've never used it before, and I just want to ask to make sure that I'm clear. So if we receive a submittal with somebody sending a number of drawings, first time we get all the drawings in, do we say there's 50 drawings? Is that something where we'll have to go through each and every drawing to log it in?
It depends on how you want to handle that process. So Newforma does is you can certainly bring those in as a package, and you could respond to them all in the package. What the submittal log does do, go back in here real quick. When we bring all of that in, as I receive those files in, we can bring in, so if they send you one PDF that encompasses all of the sheets that they want you reviewing, you can just bring that one PDF in and mark that one PDF up. If they send you 50 individual files, you can bring them all in as a package. The only thing about it is when you bring these into a single log, it basically gives you the opportunity then to identify within your description of contents what the action and remarks are for each of those pages. So you could within that then identify with that description of contents what needs to happen, and then you'd let them know, hey, we're still expecting some changes to happen with this entire package. But if you really want to granularly control review of individuals, then you might want to bring those in as a separate log for each of those sheets. So really up to you how you want to handle that.
Okay. So take that a step further. If we go to that granular identification or cataloging, if we get a second one coming in with different revisions in it, will it then be automatic at that point because we have the document number in there first? You understand what I'm trying to ask here?
I think so. Yeah, if it's part of a submission process and you're doing reviews on them, is that essentially what we're talking about? Or are they just providing you with updated revisions of the documents?
They're providing us information.
Okay.
Yeah, updated revisions. So.
Okay, so it's not necessarily that you're going to need to take those and do reviews around them and then approve them. It's more you just need to be able to disseminate those sheets.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That being the case, you may not need to use submittals at all. In that case, you may just take those documents in, file them in a file server, and then with document control, what it does is it allows you to bring those individual sheets in. In fact, we recommend that for document control because of the revisioning that you're going to do.
Right.
So if you take those individual sheets and bring them in, when you add those revisions from files, I can just go point that to the folder where those sheets have been placed by revision. And what we recommend is that they go ahead and keep the sheet names the same if possible, because this is going to recognize if the sheet has changed based on size, based on date, and all that. And it just makes it easier for Newforma to match the naming convention up for those files. If they don't, Newforma's got tools in there that will actually allow you to help match it up, and it can help you strip off anything that they might have added to the end of the name or the beginning of the name. So we just grab those documents. It's going to match them up or put them into document control. And so these ones you can tell, I've got new sheets here. It recognizes that I've already got a revision of those, so it matched them up automatically for me. And it's going to go in then and increment that revision number for me, put the new date on them, and it's going to be a reference to where those files are located. So that's what document control is doing, and then it's just helping me to see what are the revisions that we've had, gives me a quick view of those sheets and the different revisions, what state they are in. Did we actually issue them to anybody? Are they still sitting here in draft waiting for us to approve them? And then it also allows me to issue those documents out. So if I wanted to select a number of these, and we can package them as well. But if I wanted to issue those out, it'll allow me to grab the latest revision, so the highest incremented revision number, or select a specific revision. Maybe I'm sending a base set. And it'll grab those. And essentially what it's going to do then is it's just going to create a transmittal document for me for tracking purposes. And if I want to communicate those out like through InfoExchange as a file transfer, I can. These also become available through our Plans app, which anybody on your project team, internal or external, can use. So they can get these electronically. It puts them out on your InfoExchange as well for you.
All right.
Okay.
You can create a log from that, obviously, just like you could with submittals.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is creating, in fact, we actually give you one that's a little bit more extensive around this. We create a document register report. So the regular report would be what you're seeing in your window, but your register report is going to be providing you a report that's going to show you all of your issuances and your sending those out. So I can see now all the revision changes that have happened for each of those sheets, what the purpose of it is, and I'll also be able to see what the distribution was. When did we send it? Who did we send it to? In which version?
All right.
Okay.
And if you're external to this and you want to see what are all the latest revisions with all the documents, you can filter it that way and just print that out, correct?
Yeah, you can. So if you give them access to your document control, I can go to document control and it's going to show me, here's the latest issued revisions that are available to them. They can see the sheets listing, but these ones haven't actually been released yet. So they can't get access to those. These ones have, so they have access to download those.
Okay.
And they'll also be in that mobile app as well.
Okay.
All right.
I noticed that the submittal one has an extra feature that you can compare the revisions. You can compare the previous one to the new one. Is that true?
Yeah, you can. Through Newforma Project Center, I can select one of these and I can do, there's a compare tool in here that would, sorry, I just.
The submittal?
Yeah, I can do it on, basically I can do a comparison on any document. I don't know why I'm not seeing my compare tool now. Oh, I have to select the actual document, that's why. Then I should be able to do a compare to, and I can compare it to another version of this file, or I can compare it to any file that I want to on my file server. Yeah, I'd be able to see what changes have actually happened. And when you do that, we actually do with your viewer, the Newforma viewer, we'll actually do an overlay of those two documents with the slider. So I can change the transparency of one document or the other so I can quickly see, and we'll even highlight them in red and blue for you so you can see what's changed between the two documents. So it's a pretty slick tool that we give you. It's almost like a Lightroom table.
Good. Excellent. Okay. 105. Any other questions?
I don't have anything at this point.
All right. Okay, guys. Thank you so much, Joe and Conan, for organizing this session. I guess this is very helpful, and we will get back to you soon with our thoughts, and we'll be in touch, Joe.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate everybody's time. Conan, thank you again, as always. Excellent job. I really appreciate your help.
Anytime.
Guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And excuse me, Colette, I will send a follow-up email as well, just kind of when I have the recording, and then also just kind of breaking down the activity centers. But thank you, everybody.
Yeah, please. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.